Hey everyone, this is Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, and if you have seen Coco this last week, there are probably two things you've taken away from it. One, it's an excellent movie and it's very good, and while I do not think it deserves to win the Academy Award this year, it is definitely Pixar doing what I like seeing Pixar do, which is create original movies that have heart and emotion and even a few good songs occasionally. And the second thing you might have taken away from it is that the Frozen short before the movie, Olaf's Frozen Adventure, was just not very good. Now, I have to state, personally, I don't think the short was that bad. I really don't. In fact, I didn't even I didn't think it was bad at all. I quite frankly enjoyed it. I even bought the soundtrack. But there is a couple things that have been made very clear by the reaction people have had with the short. One, it should not have been in front of Coco, and two, this might actually be a sign that making a Frozen 2 is probably a mistake. Now, before we get into the reasons why, because I know some fans are going to say, yes, someone's finally going to say it, or someone's going to just reinforce it, I'm going to make some personal claims about that movie. In my review, I gave that movie 5 stars. I listed it as the 4th best film of the year. It is one of the best 3D experiences ever. I believe that when we look at the decade of Disney anime movies that came out in the current decade that it came out, that's going to be the movie everybody remembers. It's going to be the one that people really cling to in the long run. And I say all that even acknowledging that this thing should have won Best Animated Feature that year at the Academy Awards instead of Frozen. I think people disliking Frozen has more to do with its popularity, because if you ask people what you think of Frozen, most of the time their response is, it's not as good as people say it is, which isn't actually an opinion of the movie. That's an opinion of the movie, and we need to actually acknowledge that. That said, I think people are absolutely right when they should let it go. Because here's the thing, for the longest time, Disney's policy with animated movies has been to not make sequels. And it's a policy that they had ever since Walt Disney was running the company, because it came from the notion that he had when he made the Three Little Pigs short that was super popular and they wanted more pigs. He made more Three Little Pigs shorts and none of them were nearly as popular or as good. And he famously stated, you can't top pigs with pigs. Now, of course, things are a little different now. People normally plan the sequels out in advance, where a lot of times the sequels are better than the first one. And we, of course, have to acknowledge your Toy Story 2s, your How to Train Your Dragon 2s, your Kung Fu Pandas 2s and 3s being much better than the first movie. And we can't take that away. We have to acknowledge that some sequels are getting better these days. But Disney has never followed that route, and I think it's a wise one. It has always been a wise one. The only time they tried it was The Rescuers Down Under, which in all fairness was better than The Rescuers. And no, the direct-to-DVD sequels do not count. They just don't. And here's the thing. Disney is in a really unique position where people want to see their animated movies. They go out of their way to see them. And what they're looking for is they are looking for that Disney magic feeling, all while getting a new experience. And Disney is super good at doing that. And so having the no sequels policy on a storytelling level is great. Now, Bob Iger, the current CEO of Disney, he developed a philosophy years ago, and he stated his company mission, or the Disney company mission is what it was: we don't make a movie unless we can get a sequel, a toy, or a ride out of it. Like, basically, if it can get those 3 things out of the movie, it will get greenlit. But for the most part, the animated movies were not affected by this until very recently, when Frozen became a huge success. People started asking, are you going to make a sequel to Frozen? And I was always hoping the answer would be no. And yet it's a yes. Not only that, but we're getting a Wreck-It Ralph 2. and we're getting a Zootopia 2. And I don't know if you can see the problem yet, but creatively this makes a company stale. And then recently Disney canceled Gigantic, one of the only original movie I think they had in production at the time, which was going to be a new take on Jack and the Beanstalk. It was going to be directed by one of the directors of Tangled and Bolt, and the co-director and one of the writers are going to be someone who worked on Inside Out, you know. And this sounded really good. Now, true, if it wasn't working, it wasn't working, but I think it got canceled because for whatever reason Disney got really skittish. They got really skittish, and it's like, we need more sequels. Even though so far, like Big Hero 6, Moana, Zootopia, they've all done very well. It's like, but it's like now, it's like Disney movies haven't been faltering at all for the most part. The only one that really faltered in the last 15 years, I think now, is Winnie the Pooh. That's it. And it's strange that Disney's reaching for their security blanket now, but creatively it concerns me that they only do sequels. And from a company perspective, if they're doing sequels all the time, they're not creating new characters for the theme parks, which is another incentive to make original content when it comes to the movies. Now, what's this really got to do with Frozen 2, and how does it tie into Olaf's Frozen Adventure? Well, there were two reasons that Olaf's Big Adventure failed in front of Coco. And the first is a pretty obvious one. It was 21 minutes long, which for TV, that's fine. But in a movie theater where you've got 20 minutes worth of previews, and then you've got 21 minutes worth of a short, and then you've got a 100-minute movie following it. Keep in mind, this is a kids' movie, and kids have a hard time sitting still for more than 2 hours. 2 hours is even pushing it for a lot of kids. I wish it weren't so, and I think this ADD world we live in where everything runs fast and everything's like a Teen Titans Go episode, that's a problem, but it's true. And, you know, especially if the kids want to see Coco and that's why they're coming, to subject them to having to wait almost an hour before they get to see what they want to really see, that's just torturous. That's just absolutely torturous. But here's the second problem. The second problem is that, again, people love Disney experiences and they love original Disney experiences. But to have them do it again, that can be a problem. And what we're seeing with Olaf's Frozen Adventure is that while people love Frozen, will always love Frozen, I believe, do they want to see it again? Do they want to really see a sequel? I know a lot of people say they would want to see a sequel, but we kind of have a mini sequel now, and people hate it. They just hate it, and this is like, well, are you gonna really want to see Frozen 2 then? And some people are even looking at this short and it's like, oh god, don't tell me that Olaf's gonna take over this franchise. I mean, Olaf, as terms of a side character, was a very good sidekick and actually contributed to the story. So I don't want to knock on him too much, but he was in the movie as long as he needed to be. It wasn't too much and it wasn't too little. It was the right amount of time. But as you can see with Mater becoming the star of Cars 2, you can have too much of a good thing. And now in Cars 3, Mater is actually even scaled back way farther than he was in Cars 1. I think Mater might have been scaled back too much in Cars 3, to be honest, because he almost wasn't there. And that's almost as much of a problem, but that's a topic for another video, I suppose. So Olaf's Frozen Adventure is showing that it not only is 20 minutes just way too long for a movie release. If anything, maybe it would work. Like, if you're gonna have a 21-minute featurette, maybe there needs to be just 10 minutes of previews. because no one wants to wait like almost an hour to see the movie that they paid to see. But also it shows that Frozen might not do very well when it comes to the sequel. And one of the things that really could get Frozen killed is overexposure. I believe that's what has been happening. That's why a lot of people don't like it as much as they did when it came out. They saw too much of it. It got way too intrusive. And I understand. I lived through The Lion King where you couldn't escape Hakuna Matata. And I remember at one point saying, like, I just cannot stand The Lion King. It's not as great as people say it is. And I don't care if I never see it again. Now, I have obviously changed my stance on that. And The Lion King is one of my favorite movies. And I cannot imagine my life having not seen it, to be honest. But Frozen might not have that reputation if Disney makes sequels. I mean, with this featurette, they've already shown, hey, just 20 more minutes was 20 minutes too much. What are they going to do with another movie? That could do it. And if that fails, then, what about all these sequels Disney is making? I think that shows that the sequel fallacy for the Disney animated feature is super problematic, and they really need to rethink that. They need to rethink and they need to get back on making original movies, and preferably good original movies. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with this? Do you disagree? Did you like Olaf's Frozen Adventure, or did you hate it? And for reasons other than it was just too long? I'd love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.